Join me today as we talk about a dystopian TV game show nightmare from the 80s, The Running Man. This is the Geek Cabal channel. My name is Bobbie, and today we're going to be talking about The Running Man, a nightmare game show set in the distant future of 2017. Oh well. And yeah. So this movie is from 1987. That's why it's set in 2017. It's 30 years in the future. And yeah, the future did not look bright. Like 2017 ended up being quite a bit better than what we see in this movie. We might get through though. Like, you never know. So this movie is based on a story by Stephen King, although I understand it's loosely based. I haven't read the story. It is apparently also getting a remake, which I see slated for later this year. We're in 2025. So this movie took place 8 years ago. And yeah, it centers around a game show, like I will explain here in a moment. But first, let's talk about the cast, because it's one hell of a cast. So our main character is Arnold Schwarzenegger, who plays Ben Richards, also known in the movie as the Butcher of Bakersfield. I'll explain that in the explanation here. Now, in case I need to explain who Arnold is, he's been in all kinds of other movies. The Conan movies, which I've talked about on here. Predator, which is going to come up very shortly. The Terminator franchise. Commando, which Jimmy and I mock relentlessly. Raw Deal, which I've never spoken about on here, and I think it's been like 20 years since I've watched that movie. I should rewatch it and talk about it sometime. Yeah, I mean, he's, all kinds of movies, got all kinds of quips. Last Action Hero, which I'm also going to mention here in a minute. Yeah, his famous line, of course, being, "I'll be back," from the first Terminator. And it does come up in this movie.
Killian, I'll be back.
But yeah. So then we also have Richard Dawson, who plays Killian. He's the host of the game show. The Running Man is the name of the game show. Richard Dawson is best known as a former host of the Family Feud. So, an actual game show host.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Then we have Yaphet Kotto, who plays Laughlin, who is one of the people that escapes from prison with Arnold towards the beginning of the movie and ends up being one of his fellow runners once he's put into the game. Yaphet Kotto has been in several things, but I mainly know him as Kananga from the Bond movie Live and Let Die. He was the main villain. I believe he gets killed by having an expanding capsule fired into him where he blows up like a balloon and then explodes. Couldn't have happened to a better guy in the movie, by the way. So then we also have Maria Conchita Alonso, who plays Amber. She is in several things, but notably she's in Predator 2 as, I can't remember her character's name. She's the female police officer, works with Danny Glover and can't think of his name. It's going to bother me now. Should have written that one down, but he's not in this movie, so it really didn't matter. Wow. He's also in the Terminator and Aliens. Yep, I think he's the only guy that's been killed by a Terminator, Predator, and an alien, if I remember right. And that's not even bringing his name to my mind. I'm just going to keep moving. Sorry, folks. You also have Jim Brown, who plays Fireball. He's one of the stalkers. These stalkers are the people who go and chase the runners in the game. He's in a number of things, but for the people who watch this channel, the thing you've probably seen him in is Mars Attacks, where he plays a guy who works at the Luxor in Las Vegas and is trying to get to his family in Washington, D.C. Then we have Jesse Ventura as Captain Freedom, another stalker. Jesse Ventura also in a number of things, but notably the Predator. And we also have Sven Thorensson, who plays Killian's bodyguard, who's very creatively named Sven. Sven Thorson is in almost every movie Arnold's in. Like, for instance, he's in Predator. He's the Russian guy in the not mercenaries, the rebel base. And he's also in the first Conan movie where he plays Thorgrim. He's the big guy with the hammer. He's in the second Conan movie as one of the Queen's guards who ambush Arnold and company at one point. Yeah, he's in a number of movies with Arnold. I think they're friends or trainers together or something. He's also in the movie Gladiator, where he plays Tigris de Gaulle, who's the guy they bring out of retirement to fight Russell Crowe one-on-one in the arena, the guy with like the silver face mask, where they bring the tigers out and everything. That's him. Or alternatively, for you comedy-inclined folks, he plays LaFours in the movie Mallrats, the like ultimate security guard they bring in to make sure that nothing happens with the game show. Then we also have Kurt Fuller, who plays Tony. He's a producer. He's in several things, but the things I mainly know him from, he was the mayor's aide, Jack something, I think, in Ghostbusters 2. The guy who keeps, like, intercepting the Ghostbusters so they can't get to the mayor to tell them what the hell's going on. Also plays Woody on Psych. He is the mortician who does all the autopsies and everything. And being a comedy show, it's a funny role. I thought he was pretty good in that, by the way. Then we have Professor Toru Tanaka as Sub-Zero, one of the stalkers. I think they actually introduce as Professor Sub-Zero the first time they say his name, I think. But he's in several movies where they basically need like a giant Asian guy to be the tough guy. Notably, he's in Last Action Hero, another Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and in that one, I believe he's the like main henchman for the main bad guy, who is himself a henchman. Yeah, he's played by Charles Dance, by the way. Pretty good in that. Then we also have some other interesting members of the cast. There's a character named Mick, who's the leader of the Resistance, who's played by Mick Fleetwood. And just in case I need to spell that out, yes, that is Fleetwood of Fleetwood Mac fame, Mick Fleetwood. And one of his main guys is played by Dweezil Zappa, who is Frank Zappa's son, and he plays a character named Stevie. And an obvious call out to Stevie Nicks, who was the main female lead for Fleetwood Mac for a good chunk of their time, and then went solo and then came back. And yeah, there's a whole backstory of that group. If you don't know, the album, I think it's the album Dreams, is literally just songs they all wrote about the rampant cheating and infidelity and everything going on within the group. Because it's a couple couples that were sleeping around with each other out of their coupling, and so Sweet Little Lies, that's what that's all about. And so they wrote this album. They all know what the songs are about, and they're out there performing these songs knowing that they're about each other. I don't think I could do that. Found that out one night on Top Gear, and I think it's Mick Fleetwood they were talking to. But yeah, so quite the cast in this movie. A lot of names here. But yeah, so Arnold's character plays a military officer. Beginning of the movie, this takes place in 2017, and there's been economic collapse and ruin, and so some kind of fascist government rules over everything, and they use blood sports like the Running Man to try to keep people's minds off the fact that their lives really suck now, and also as a means of control, because you don't want to wind up on the Running Man. So there's a food riot in progress, and they order Arnold. He's a helicopter pilot. They order him to open fire on the crowd, and he's like, "I'm not going to fire on innocent people. The hell with you. I'm turning around." And so everyone on the helicopter starts fighting, Richards, we're going to fire on him. So then they arrest him, and he winds up in a prison. And By prison, I mean it's some kind of like weird industrial looking thing. I don't know if they're tearing the place apart or what they're doing because it's really hard to tell. Like they're just sawing random things and sparks are flying everywhere and people are moving wheelbarrows full of crap around everywhere. Like I don't really know what it was actually supposed to be happening there. To be totally honest. The prison uses exploding collars on people's necks to make sure they don't escape. There's an electronic perimeter. You go outside of it, you lose your head. So Arnold and two of the others are concocting an escape. The other guy, Weiss, he's the computer guy. He gets the code, and he like gives them the signal, and so then Arnold and Yaphet Kotto start fighting, so they can draw the guards in, get their guns, and because they knew they had to deactivate the thing to be able to actually escape. So they do that, and they manage to escape. Although, since this being an '80s action movie, you do get to see one of the collars actually work. And some guy definitely loses his head. So they escape. They meet up with Mick Fleetwood's character, who's able to disable the collars and remove them. Now, just a little side note. To me, this is the kind of thing where you can make the prison totally inescapable, and like anywhere near a population center, you just have a blanket signal going out that'll detonate those collars. So they'll think they've escaped and they get near a city, then kaboom. But anyway, so they do that. Then Arnold goes to what he thinks is his brother's apartment, and eventually Maria Conchita Alonso's character shows up, and she's like, I don't know, the last guy got taken away to re-education, so they've arrested his brother. And so he is going to use her ID and some money and stuff to try to escape. And she actually works for the network that shows the Running Man. And he gets caught at the airport because she makes a scene. So they bring him in. They're like, well, the ratings are starting to slump. Killian sees this guy, sees the escape footage, and he's like, this is the guy. We could use this guy. Like, he'll put up a fight. He'll make it interesting. So he gets a hold of him. Then he already has Weiss and Laughlin, and he's like, well, Ben, like, if you don't go, like, someone's got to. Like, it's going to be these two guys, and we both know they don't have what it takes. So he's like, all right, I'll go if you don't send them. That's the agreement. And then Killian reneges. They're there, and, like, they're getting to launch him, and then he says, oh, but Ben shouldn't just go by himself. What about his buddies? And so they're over there too, and he's like, oh yeah, son of a bitch. And they also have edited footage. They have edited from the beginning of the movie what you see to make it look like Arnold intentionally fired on the crowd. So that's why he's known as the Butcher of Bakersfield. So the public opinion's been turned against him. Now, Amber has started to suspect that something's not right, because she saw the footage of what they showed of his escape at the airport, and like, oh, he shot this guy and beat this guy up, and she seems like, that didn't happen, I was there. Like, what the hell's this? So she realizes that they're lying about that. She realizes Ben said that he was lying about something else. And then she's standing in the hallway with her friend as they're bringing Ben through, and her friend's like, hey, you're lucky that he didn't, have his way with you and then kill you. Or kill you, then have his way with you. Which I thought was particularly morbid that she'd bring up that possibility. And she's like, seriously, what could have stopped him? And Amber's kind of like, yeah. Realizing that, like, nothing could have stopped him. Like, there's no way she could have, because clearly she didn't. And yet, he didn't actually hurt her. This is supposed to be the big bad killer. And then she sees, what they're saying he did at the airport, and she's beginning to put two and two together that, like, they're definitely lying. So she goes and gets the unaltered footage, but then they capture her, and they put her in the game. And they start lying about her in the background, too. It's like, oh, she lied on college entrance exams. And she's like, what the hell's this? And I'm like, so yeah. So she gets thrown in there, too. Then once they're in there, we begin to see the stalkers that are coming after them. And so they've got like a studio audience, and like they'll pick someone and be like, okay, so who do you want to send in? And like, oh, I'll send in Sub-Zero first. And I send in Sub-Zero. Well, Sub-Zero's whole shtick is he's like a hockey guy with like his stick's got, like a blade on it and everything. So send him in. And then Arnold kills him, which has never happened in the history of the show. And so Killian's having to explain to someone on the other end of the phone, like, well, it's a full contact sport. Like, because sooner or later, one of the stalkers was going to get killed. Like, it's an inevitability. And it's funny, I don't think it's that conversation, but one, he's trying to explain something to someone. He's like, what are you going to do? Just put on rear ends of Gilligan's Island? He's like, Gilligan's Island. It's like, yeah, the one with the boat.
You want ratings? You want people in front of the TV sets instead of picket lines? Well, you ain't going to get that with reruns of Gilligan's Island. Gilligan's Island. Yeah, the one with the boat.
And so he's talking to someone that just doesn't know anything about the history of TV. Okay, and that's going to come up again with Mick later on. It's an interesting that the two of them look like they're from the same era, and so they have the same kind of problem. Just a little funny side note. So he gets killed, and then the other guy can't decide. He's like, well, I don't know if we're going Dynamo or Buzzsaw. And Killian's like, well, don't decide. We'll send them both in. So, like, Dynamo, he's got like a light-up costume and a car, like, shoots electricity at people. And Buzzsaw has chainsaws. And, yeah. So, Arnold ends up fighting Buzzsaw and takes him out with his own chainsaw. Then Dynamo, like, wrecks his car. He's upside down, and Arnold refuses to kill him. So the subplot that's running through all this is that there's also an underground resistance. And Weiss and Laughlin were part of it, and Mick is the leader. So they're trying to figure out where the broadcasts, where the channel, where they're sending out the signal for the channel, because they're going to try to jam the broadcast and put something else on. But they need to know where the uplink tower is. And once they're inside the game, Weiss figures out the uplink is inside the game area somewhere. That's why anyone could find it, because it's several city blocks. And yeah, so inside there he finds the uplink tower, and they need a code. He gets the code, gives it to Amber, and then Dynamo kills him, and Buzzsaw ends up killing Laughlin. So then they send in Fireball, who, like I said, is Jim Brown. He comes flying in on a jetpack and has a flamethrower. Then Arnold takes him out. Oh, and of course, each of these kills is accompanied with, typical Arnold puns to deal with, the fact that he's killed somebody. They're fairly humorous, too. So then they're trying to get Captain Freedom, Jesse Ventura's character, to go in there, and he comes into Killian's office, and he's wearing some kind of goofy robot-looking thing, and he's like, Killian, I'm not wearing this crap in there. Like, I look ridiculous. He's like, I've killed guys like this with my bare hands. Like, this is a game of death and honor, code of the gladiator. And Killian's like, I don't care what the hell you're talking about. Like, you're going in there. And so he's like, nope, not doing it.
Killing guys like this 10 years ago with my bare hands. I'm not going for any of these tricks. This is a sport of death and honor. To the gladiators.
Cap, will you spare me the combat Zen speech?
So Sven has to escort him out. And so the big plan is they're going to make it look like he kills him with CGI. So they take some earlier fight, and a stunt double, and and put Arnold's face on him and everything. And so they make it look like him and Amber are dead. Meanwhile, Arnold and Amber have found the Resistance, who's also got a thing inside the game area. And so they're there with Mick. And so they're dead now on TV. And Amber's like, great, now we can leave. And Arnold's like, oh, no, you don't understand. Like, we can't leave now. Like, they've told the world we're dead. They're going to make sure that we're dead. They're going to sweep this place with the army if they have to. So now their only choice is to go confront them at the studio, which they're going to go do. So Arnold's going to lead them. And because he feels he owes it to Laughlin, because Laughlin took a hit that was meant for him, and so he's going to go do it. So they get everything ready to go jam the satellite. They get armed up. They go to the studio, and they're getting ready to go in. And Mick is there in the rebel base, and he turns to his guy who's like setting everything up, and he's like, "Oh, all right, well, you have the con, Mr. Spock." The guy turns like, "Who's Mr. Spock?" And Mick just has this look on his face like, "Oh my God," because even in the 80s, people would have known who Mr. Spock was. This is 30 years from that. So anyway, like I said, same problem Killian has, and it's very similar to in the movie The Book of Eli, where towards the end of the movie, this sort of post-apocalyptic movie, nuclear detonations, destroy the world. Gary Oldman plays a guy who's alive before that, and he's after something that Denzel Washington has, and Denzel says that he put it behind, that it's behind the TV and in his house. And Gary Oldman tells his guys to go and says behind the TV, and one of the guys like, behind the what? And he's like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Because he spent his whole life around televisions. He knows what everyone knew what a TV was. But in the post-apocalyptic world, there's no electricity, no broadcasting. Of course they don't know what a TV is. They've never seen one. But it's just one of those like, yeah, I could see that reaction. So anyway, so they bust back in. And earlier, Arnold had told Killian, right before he sends him into the arena,
Killian, I'll be back.
Only in a rerun.
Well, so they come in there, and the guards start shooting at the studio audience, and Arnold tells the guys to get the people out, the studio audience. Mind you, this is the audience who came to watch a blood sport, knowing full well what it was. These are the people that Arnold and the rebels really shouldn't have any sympathy for, but they go above and beyond trying to get them out, and it's the studio guards that are shooting them. So it's an interesting moment. And there's a lot of little things like that in the movie. Like, it gets to a point where the people that are betting, we keep seeing like betting outside and like in the streets and everything. It gets to a point where people start betting on Richards instead of the stalkers. And Killian is trying to tell everyone, like, look, they're betting on Richards out there. And no one else seems to get the gravity of what's going on. Because Killian understands they're not just a TV show. Like, they're meant to, like, hypnotize the masses. Like, he knows what their job is. And he knows that, like, if someone like Richards, like one of the contestants, becomes the star of the show, that's not good. Like, that's not good for the regime. That's not good for them. And it won't be good at all. So he knows the gravity of what's going on. It's just no one around him really seems to appreciate it. But then again, they don't know what Gilligan's Island is, so... Yeah, so... and there's an old woman in the studio who, she's the first one. Like, he's this woman that he goes to a couple times, and finally he's like, well, I think her name's Agnes, maybe. Like, Agnes, who do you think is going to make the next kill? And she's like, I think the next kill is going to be by Ben Richards. He's like, Agnes, Richards is a runner. You can't pick him. You got to pick a stalker. She's like, I can pick whoever the hell I want. Like, and I think it's Richards. That boy's one mean mother. And yeah, I think that's the point where the people in the street start betting on Richards, and the guys that are making the odds are like, all right, and like throw some odds like 100-1. They had to have lost their shirt because he made the next kill. Yeah, so like the tide's turning, but also like the audience cheers whenever Richards kills Fireball, and Killian like realizes he's losing control and tries to reassert, and it's not working. So anyway, then they all show up and the big shootout, and then Arnold finds Killian. And earlier, Killian, I think, had told him something like, one of us is in big trouble. And so he says the same thing back to Killian. But then Sven shows up. Now, earlier, he had ridiculed Sven about something and basically, like, said, what, do steroids make you deaf or something? And so Killian sees Sven walking up, he gets this cocky look on his face because he's like, oh, Sven's going to fight him. He can save me. Then Sven takes one look at Arnold, looks over at Killian, looks at Arnold again, kind of looks back at Killian, and is like, I'm going to go score some steroids, and turns around and leaves. So then Arnold loads Killian up into the thing that fires him off into the arena and sends him out there. And he's like, I'm just giving the crowd what they want and send them out. And the safeties aren't there anymore because they weren't expecting anyone. So he smashed in this giant sign of him at the end and blows up. And Arnold's like, that hit the spot. And then to remind you, this is an 80s movie, some kind of 80s music comes on at the end to send us out, even though there have been no like real songs throughout the whole movie. And the implication is that the people in the streets start cheering and everything. So then you see like a shot of like the city, and like you see the people betting. There's a big screen where they're watching it, and it cuts to "Please stand by." And I don't know. I guess the regime falls after that. Maybe, I don't know. Probably pretty optimistic, but overall, really good movie. Probably a 8.5, somewhere in there. No real major logical inconsistencies. Also, I doubt the movie had I didn't look it up, but I don't think the movie would have had a very high budget. I think this was definitely like a study in how to do a little or how to do a lot with a little, because you really only have a few set pieces. Like you've got the studio, which that could have just been in a studio somewhere. That might not have even needed much construction to actually make that work. The interiors are just hallways. You got the apartment, which could be anywhere. You've got the airport. That they probably actually didn't need to go to an airport somewhere because there's a couple of external shots, but they probably filmed those all in a day, tops, maybe 2 if they had any reshoots or anything. Then the helicopter sequence is a helicopter against a blue screen or something, because you can tell it's not real outside. You never see what's actually down on the ground. It's a CGI thing, like a computer-generated screen, like heat signatures and stuff. Then the prison isn't a prison. It's just, some old industrial site somewhere that they probably rented on the real cheap and probably didn't take long to film any of that. The outside street shots, they're random kind of slum-looking shots. The studio, I think the building is either a model or a matte painting, because I don't think that's a real building in LA, but I could be wrong. And it looked like I could see the transition from where it was real to the rest. And and then where the runners are going, it's just some rundown industrial area. It could have been filmed in the same place they filmed half of RoboCop, for all I know. So, like actual locations, probably pretty cheap, if I had to guess. Then like the specific stalker areas, they just need a little bit of a transition into those, and that could have been in a studio somewhere. Because obviously there's no ice rink in the middle of an industrial area for like the Sub-Zero fight. But I think it's probably be able to film it relatively cheap. Now the stars probably commanded some money, but yeah, there's no like all the like special effects are like squibs from people getting shot, the exploding head, and then Dynamo's electric weapon, which we only really see used like 2 or 3 times. So, there's not any, that's the only thing approaching like CG, and that's probably not even CG, given that it was the 80s. So yeah, there wouldn't have really been, a lot of major effects in the movie. The soundtrack, like I said, there's one real song at the end, other than that, it's a score. So, yeah, it's probably a relatively cheap movie. A lot of bang for your buck, though, and what you get, because it's a competent movie. Unless you know what you're looking for, you wouldn't even notice all this. It looks like a complete movie. And the cast is great. Everyone hits their numbers, and overall, great movie. Nice dystopian nightmare movie. So yeah, like I said, I think it's definitely worth checking out. I think I caught it on Amazon Prime, but I think it's on some other things. And I know it definitely has physical copies. And like I said, it's got a remake coming. I don't know anything about the remake. The main guy that's in it was the main guy from Twisters, I believe. And I think I saw Josh Brolin's name attached to it also. Don't know if it's going to be more accurate to the book or not. We'll see. But overall, definitely worth checking out. I think it's one of Arnold's better movies. There's a little bit of social commentary in there, because there is like I've heard people talk about how we as people have a fascination with blood sports. Like you can see that back in the Roman era. You can see it with some movies that are popular like this, the Death Race 2000. Less so Death Race, because Death Race 2000 has a lot more carnage in it. And then, and movies like The Hunger Games, obviously it's based on a book, but, The Hunger Games, Battle Royale, like, even going back in literature, you go far enough back, what is it? The Most Dangerous Game? Is that it? About a man hunting other people, Clearly, there's something in us that likes to see blood sports. And there's also something about using that to placate the masses. So, definitely some social commentary in there. More so than, say, Predator. The social commentary is don't go into the jungle unless you want a translucent alien to kill you and take your head. I don't really see the social commentary in that one. Terminator, maybe. Maybe we shouldn't pursue AI. It's going to kill us all. But yeah, overall, good movie. Worth a check. If you've never seen it, definitely worth checking out. But that's about all I've got to say on this one. So let me know what you folks think down in the comments. If you've seen this one before, plan on seeing it. Did you like it? Dislike it? Do you like Arnold movies in general? Do you think we're barreling towards a situation where we're going to see a real version of this game show at some point? Anything like that. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Sharing and commenting on things that help us grow the channel. We always appreciate it. Obviously, we always appreciate subscribers too. But yeah, other than that, just remember,
I'll be back.